What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with my top 10 TV shows of 2025. TV continues to be very robust year to year, so it's hard to narrow down a top 10. I watched about 25 or so scripted series, which will comprise of this list here. So we'll go through my 10 to 1 and then talk about some honorable mentions as well. Of course, make sure you check out my top 10 music lists, of which there are 3, and also my top 10 movies list coming soon. But yeah, let's jump into my top 10 TV shows of the year. So kicking things off at number 10 is Alien Earth on FX. Of course, the first season from Noah Hawley. I think this is probably a bit higher on my list than it is on most people's list, but I really responded to it. As a big fan of the Alien franchise, I was very excited about it. Also a big fan of Noah Hawley's work at FX, of course, with Fargo and Legion. And I had a lot of faith in that creative team. And I think it really bore fruit. I think season 1 ended up being a really effective proof of concept season. And maybe it ran out of steam a little bit by the end, but I'm really excited for season 2. And I think just visually, production-wise, alien lore-wise, there was just so much there to be excited about and entertained by. And performance-wise, whether it was Timothy Olyphant, Babu Cisse, there's a ton of great stuff here. Samuel Blanken as well. I really enjoyed the show, and I think season 2 has the opportunity to be even stronger. So I'm just happy it honestly went as well as it did. And it was another production that really showed the benefits of on-location shooting. The fact that Alien Earth was shot pretty extensively, exclusively in Thailand, really showed up. Number 9 for me is I Love LA from HBO, another first season show. Of course, this is the 30-minute comedy series from Rachel Sennett. And, I wouldn't call this a transcendent first season or anything, but I thought it was, again, another really successful first season for a show, really establishing why I Love LA is a very funny show. And I think just premise-wise, this close group of friends that are pursuing fame via the internet, via the world of social media and influencing, lending itself to a lot of, I think, great commentary on modern day celebrity and Los Angeles culture as well. I think all that really worked. Rachel Sennett has already proven herself to be a really funny person due to her movie work. This is her first, significant TV show, of course. Odessa A'zion as Tallulah is the revelation of the series, of course, just absolutely incredible with her wildcard nature. And pairing this with her upcoming supporting role in A24's Marty Supreme, she's certainly someone to pay attention to and be excited about. Jordan Firstman also really exciting just because that guy is hilarious whenever he says basically anything. So I really enjoyed I Love LA, and I'm looking forward to season 2. Number 8 for me is The White Lotus season 3, once again on HBO. This is certainly lower than White Lotus normally would be on a list. I definitely was higher on the first 2 seasons, and I think season 3 did deserve some criticism for not fully bringing all its narrative and character arcs together in as much of a cohesive manner as the first 2 seasons concluded, but I still really enjoy just the hang of this show. I think the minute to minute of the show is just so lavish and just so high level that I'm not ever really that invested in like the core mystery or whatever death is teased in the very beginning of the show. I really couldn't care about that. So like watching the family of Jason Isaacs and Parker Posey and seeing them really go through it in many respects, that was kind of enough for me, honestly. And I think just performances, again, whether it's dramatic performance or strictly comedic performance, you get just tons of great stuff on this show in general, and that continues with this season. Number 7 for me is The Bear season 4 on FX. This was a comeback season of The Bear for me. Season 3 was still a quality show, but certainly really brought the vibe down, and the lack of plot progression, I think, frustrated many. Bear season 4 certainly got back on track for me in a lot of respects. I think there was a lot of satisfying aspects of this show, and even though the show didn't end up concluding, I was expecting The Bear season 4 to be the final season of the show. We are, in fact, getting a season 5. The narrative steam is still thin, it feels like, but I just think there were just stronger episodes, there were stronger character arcs in season 4, and the core traits of this show in terms of this cast, this restaurant setting and this show's interest in its characters, grief and trauma, right? It's not actually a comedy, despite where it gets nominated at the Emmys. That stuff is still really there. So I'm not tired of it. I'm still a big believer of what The Bear can do as a storytelling engine. And now we're getting to my top 6 shows of 2025. And to me, this top 6 was like pretty unassailable. And obviously you could quibble with the order, but like these 6 shows to me were pretty clearly the 6 best shows of the year. I have nothing bad to say about any of these shows to come up. Number 6 for me was Task on HBO, which now we know is Task Season 1. It was originally pitched and thought of as a limited series. We now know it will in fact return for a Season 2 with star Mark Ruffalo returning. Of course, this is the show from Brad Inglesby, his follow-up series, or not connected, his follow-up series to Mayor of Easttown on HBO. And Task, man, for a crime drama series that is not trying to be mysterious, you basically know all of the character twists and character roles for the most part in the very beginning of the series. There is one reveal of note that comes up that wasn't too hard to foresee, but still notable, I guess. It's not really concerned about that mystery stuff. This is a show that's so much better than that because it's more interested in these specific characters and what they're going through. And whether it's the Mark Ruffalo performance, the Tom Pelphrey performance, and their clash, their inevitable battle against each other as the hunter and the hunted, the police officer and the criminal, right? And what drives you to do certain things in terms of trying to provide for your family and that kind of desperation. I think just thematically, it was really powerful stuff. There's just a lot of raw emotion on this show. Amelia Jones, unrecognizable in the role. She was incredible. The whole cast, though, I really enjoyed. And I just think I was really excited by the end to really watch this show week to week, because even though it's not really a show about its plot, you're still really excited to just see things happen and just be in this world. It just felt so lived in and so real because these characters were so rich. So I really enjoyed Task. It's certainly probably the biggest or second biggest bummer show of the year in terms of not being exactly a fun hang, but I think it was really excellent. And I hesitated to call Task the biggest bummer show of the year because next up, my number 5 is Netflix's Adolescence, which is definitely a massive bummer as well. This is probably the biggest TV surprise of 2025. Adolescence kind of came out of nowhere in the beginning of the year and was shot out of a cannon immediately. Like this show was on rocket fuel. And over the course of that first weekend, these 4 episodes that constituted this limited series just really took off. This is a show that now is like revered in a certain sense in the United Kingdom and being shown in public TV, school settings and things like that. Another acting and writing showcase, but just the framing of this show, right? This very young boy accused of murder, and watching us go through this investigation with differing perspective across each episode. So we start with the cops, we go to the parents by the end, everything in between. It's shot in a one-take style. The darkness and the despair of something so sensitive in terms of this type of subject matter, in terms of a young kid committing murder, very heavy, right? But the reason the show goes above and beyond with that is due to the stellarness of the acting performances. And of course, Aaron Doherty is really great. Stephen Graham, who's a co-creator as the father, he's really great. But Owen Cooper as the young boy, just a complete and utter discovery. Like, this is a future star without a shadow of a doubt. He already won the Emmy for this role. I believe that made him the youngest Emmy winner in the limited series category, if I remember the stat properly. Just an exceptional achievement, and one of the most robust and stuffed at the gills with commentary and themes shows I've ever seen that was only actually 4 hours long. So much contained in such an efficient storytelling vehicle. Truly tremendous stuff. And for a while I had it at the very top of the list, and I think that actually speaks to just how strong this television year was, that by the end I actually have Adolescence all the way down at 5, and it really has nothing to do with this show. Just that's how deep the top of the year was. Number 4 for me is Pluribus Season 1 on Apple TV Plus. This might be a high position and ranking for some people. I know this is probably a bit more of a polarizing show than the rest of my top 6 is. And I think that's because some people are frustrated with the reality of what Pluribus is invested in as a storytelling. It's not trying to teach you and communicate the mystery of its science fiction premise. This is a show that's more invested in its towering lead performance from Ray Seahorn as Carol, and what makes this character feel grief and feel loneliness and long for compassion in a world where she's one of the few human beings that still has control of her own brain. It's a complete acting showcase for Seahorn. The script writing and the meticulousness of this storytelling, very reminiscent of what Vince Gilligan previously did with Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Just how methodical and finely paced this show is in terms of what it's focused on communicating really speaks to just how operating on full cylinders Gilligan continues to be as a creator. And some people are frustrated with that pace, which I can understand, but you have to really, I think, let that go and understand what this show is trying to communicate. And I think the way it takes you through this journey and making you sit with it in real time is why it's so effective. Number 3 for me is The Studio, season 1 on Apple TV Plus. Man, this show was so incredibly funny. I love this stuff. The fact that it's about a fictional film studio, main character is a fictional film executive, of course, played by series co-creator Seth Rogen. All that speaks to me as a fan of film and television, a fan of Hollywood, and there's so much inside baseball in terms of the dynamics of film development and studio politics and all that kind of stuff, which is just catnip for someone who's an observer of the industry like myself. But it also works just as a really great workplace comedy with some fun hijinks, and due to its subject matter, lends itself to numerous other celebrities and famous people playing fictionalized versions of themselves, whether a cameo role or an extended supporting role. Thinking of people like Dave Franco and Zoe Kravitz and Bryan Cranston and how game they are to lampoon themselves and play extremely fictionalized versions of themselves in the show. It's really great stuff. Rogen, his comedic energy remains as good as ever, frankly, and the supporting cast is just stacked. I think Ike Barinholtz is perfect as a supporting comedic performance on this show. He's tremendous. Chase Sui Wonders also makes an amazing impression on this. You know, I had first seen her in Bodies, and she was one of the ensemble there, but she gets a ton to do on this show as it really progresses, and she's great. Other people like Catherine O'Hara and Catherine Hahn, you know, people who are always great, right? I think the show continues to just progress and get better and better, right? The Golden Globes episode was frankly outstanding and wowing, and how they were able to pull that off. And then the 2-part CinemaCon finale is some of the funniest, most laugh out loud I've ever been watching a show. Like, that was really some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen. And I also find the show pretty sophisticated in how it's actually trying to comment on the modern day real life struggles of, you know, being an existing movie studio. And the show tackles that head on from the very beginning, when the core crux of our plot is getting a Kool-Aid movie made. So I love the studio. It's also so lavish. It looks freaking fantastic. You know, I cannot wait for season 2. Number 2 for me is The Pitt from HBO. I think it was technically more of a Max original back when that was still a significant delineation. But The Pitt, also a massive surprise when season 1 dropped in a weekly fashion at the beginning of the year. A longer season, the longest season of my list for sure. One of the most significant shows to be longer than 10 episodes, but I think The Pitt is just so excellent for its ability to exist as a reminder of how TV used to function in terms of a longer season, a kind of recurring procedural nature to its storytelling, a la a traditional medical show, right? This is, of course, very much the spiritual successor to ER, and there's actually some litigation about that, which you can read about. But The Pitt just was so outstanding for being able to communicate, I think, true emotion and true investment into characters you just met. Because as we watch this show, you get so connected to this greater ensemble at this hospital. Of course, Noah Wiley's central performance is paramount to the success of this show. Catherine Lanasso also really amazing in supporting work as Nurse Dana. Other characters throughout the ensemble, young and old, you know, veteran and rookie across the medical spectrum. The cast really settles in, and you get invested in these journeys. And as you watch things happen, to these doctors, and people come into the hospital, and you see grief and you see death, and you see people struggling to comprehend that as they encounter that in their day-to-day lives, because that's literally their job. Man, I was riveted by this show. I thought it was so incredible. And the fact that it's coming back for season 2 in exactly a year's time, the beginning of January 2026, is incredible stuff, because again, that speaks to how TV used to work when it was a regular recurring thing. And while we'll have to wait for Pluribus, we'll have to wait for the studio and Task, those will take a while to come back to our screen, at least 2 years. The Pitt's rolling. The Pitt's like the bear. The Pitt will be around. And that's really cool. And I think this is just a really high level execution of a more traditional form of TV storytelling. And lastly, my number one show of the year is Andor Season 2 on Disney+. Was there really any doubt what the best show of 2025 was? Obviously, Andor was the best show of the year. One of the most sophisticated and high-level expansions of an IP for an adult audience. Tony Gilroy and his creative team accomplished more than I ever could have imagined with a Rogue One spin-off TV series. Frankly, this show is a miracle that it was ever made, given how this budget worked, the fact that it was actually shot on location and in traditional studio space versus at the volume like The Mandalorian was. The show accomplishes so much as a TV show, as something for adults, something that's appealing and interesting to someone who's not even a hardcore Star Wars fan. But if you are a hardcore Star Wars fan like myself, this show was catnip because it was such high level execution of stories and characters, villains and heroes that we know and we're familiar with, and it ruled. Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen Rael, the revelation of season 1, an incredibly created and conceived character, one of the best Star Wars characters of the last 10 years. And they were able to somehow take that a step farther with season 2 and get you so invested and so impressed with the character of Clea, played by Elizabeth Dallao, another amazing character that I was so invested in as season 2 progressed. There's just amazing action and set pieces that are super high level and of the quality we expect from Star Wars here, and also just amazing character progression and character investment because the storytelling, the screenplays for this show were just that advanced. I really want to own this show on Blu-ray if it ever gets an official release, if an official 4K out there, just because we're never going to get something like this again. Like, this was truly a product of the old way of making things on streaming. And the fact that we got these 2 seasons and they're as good as they are is really just the triumph. I would encourage anyone who has any doubts about Andor to just revisit all of the Gorman stuff in season 2 and just understand how sophisticated that was. I remain really in awe of the show, and I cannot wait to rewatch it. And just to recap, here are my top 10 TV shows of 2025. Number 10, Alien Earth on FX. Number 9, I Love LA on HBO. Number 8, The White Lotus Season 3 on HBO. Number 7, The Bear Season 4 on FX. Number 6, Task on HBO. Number 5, Adolescence on Netflix. Number 4, Pluribus on Apple TV+. Number 3, The Studio on Apple TV+. Number 2, The Pitt on HBO. And number 1, my best show of 2025, Andor Season 2 on Disney+. Let me know what your favorite TV shows of the year were as well. And just to wrap up with my honorable mentions, probably my most high-profile omission was number 11 for me was Severance on Apple TV+. Number 12 was The Last of Us. Severance, I didn't connect with nearly as much. I really appreciate the craft there. I think just storytelling-wise, character-wise, I just was not as invested with it, unfortunately. I think it's a bit lost in its sauce right now. I really enjoyed Hacks Season 4. I thought that was a really strong return season for that show. Gen V Season 2, I had a lot of time for. Still in progress, but the Stranger Things final season has been better than I expected as well. I thought Death by Lightning as a 4-episode miniseries on Netflix, that really worked for me. Peacemaker Season 2 I thought was pretty solid. Your Friends and Neighbors for a really messy type show on Apple. I had some time for it. Probably my biggest disappointment of the year would be Lazarus, the anime show that was available to stream on HBO. That Adult Swim show. That disappointed me. That was from the creator of Cowboy Bebop. And I just found it really derivative and ultimately uninteresting and a bit dull for me. In terms of shows I wanted to watch that I didn't get to, I wanted to watch Eastern Gate. I wanted to watch Families Like Ours, The Eternaut, The Lowdown on FX. Can't get to everything. Obviously, TV's a much higher time investment than film. I'm able to get to 100 movies every year, but I'm usually in the 20s for shows nowadays. I don't quite get the 30 plus anymore like I used to. Let me know that. What were your favorite shows of the year? What did I leave out? Did I do Severance wrong? If so, please tell me. And for more TV reviews as the seasons come out and premiere during the year, subscribe. And I'll see you next time.